Admiral Kyung-ho stared at the holographic display in disbelief. His weathered hands trembled as he read the energy readings for the third time. The numbers didn't lie, but they made no sense. These signatures were impossible. They matched records. From 3,000 years ago, from the first war that nearly destroyed the galaxy. The Galactic Council Chamber had never seen such chaos. Representatives from dozens of alien species shouted in their native tongues, their translators struggling to keep up with the panic. Some delegates were already heading for the exits, preparing to warn their homeworlds of what might be coming. Lieutenant. Hae-jin stood frozen near the back of the chamber. At 26, she was the youngest human ever to serve as Earth's representative to the Council. Her dark eyes darted between the panicking aliens and the impossible data streaming across the main screens. She had studied the First War in the Academy, but those were just history lessons. Ancient battles fought before Earth even knew aliens existed. Keeper Vothra requests access to the Forbidden Archives, announced the Chamber's AI system. A hush fell over the room. The Forbidden Archives contained the galaxy's darkest secrets, information so dangerous that accessing it required unanimous consent from all Council members. Vothra was one of the oldest beings in the galaxy, a creature whose species had witnessed the First War firsthand. Granted, came the unanimous response, though many voices shook with fear. The chamber's lights dimmed as ancient holographic projectors activated. Images flickered to life. Massive space battles, dying stars, and something else. Something that made even the bravest aliens step backward. "Behold," Vothra's ancient voice echoed through the chamber. "Humanity's guardian," Hae-jin gasped. The hologram showed a massive structure, crystalline and beautiful, but clearly not human in design. It moved through space like a living thing, destroying enemy fleets with weapons that seemed to bend reality itself. "This is impossible," whispered Admiral Kyung-ho. "Humans didn't even have space travel 3,000 years ago. We were still using primitive tools." "The Guardian was never human," Vothra explained, his 6 eyes gleaming in the holographic light. "It was something far older, something that chose your world as its sanctuary after the First War ended." The implications hit the chamber like a physical blow. Earth wasn't just another planet in the galaxy. It was the home of the most powerful entity ever recorded. And now, after 3 millennia of silence, it was waking up. Meanwhile, on Earth, Dr. Min-soo was having the strangest day of his career. The seismologist had been monitoring earthquake activity from his lab in Busan when every sensor on the planet started showing the same impossible reading. Synchronized pulses were coming from the deepest parts of the Pacific Ocean. "This can't be right," he muttered, adjusting his thick glasses as he stared at the data. The pulses were too regular, too purposeful to be natural. They reminded him of a heartbeat, if hearts were the size of mountains and beat once every 10 minutes. His colleague, Dr. Yoon-hee, burst into the lab with her laptop clutched against her chest. "Min-soo, you need to see this. The pulse is getting stronger. Whatever's down there, it's not just moving, it's rising." The 2 scientists stared at their combined data in stunned silence. Something massive was stirring in the deepest ocean trenches, places where no human had ever been. The pulses were creating tiny earthquakes across the entire Pacific Rim, but in a pattern that suggested intelligence. "Should we contact the government?" Yoon-hee asked nervously. Before Min-soo could answer, every screen in the lab flickered. For just a moment, an image appeared. The same crystalline structure that Hae-jin was seeing in the Galactic Council Chamber, thousands of light years away. Back in space, the Council Chamber had erupted into chaos again. Some aliens were demanding immediate military action against Earth. Others insisted on diplomatic contact. A few species representatives had simply fainted from the stress. "Order!" Admiral Kyung-ho shouted, his voice cutting through the noise. "We need to think clearly. If this Guardian protected the galaxy once, maybe it's waking up because we need protection again. Or maybe it's waking up to finish what the First War started," countered Ambassador Zelkthan, his purple scales rippling with fear. "We know nothing about its true intentions," Hae-jin found her voice at last. "With respect, we know it chose Earth as its home. That has to mean something. My people have lived alongside this entity for 3,000 years without knowing it existed. If it wanted us dead, we would be. The chamber fell silent again. In the distance, space monitoring stations continued to detect the impossible energy signatures growing stronger by the hour. Something ancient and powerful was awakening from its long sleep, and the galaxy held its breath, waiting to see whether salvation or destruction would follow. The forgotten protector had returned, and nothing would ever be the same. Commander. Jiwoo had seen many strange things during her 20 years in the Korean Navy, but nothing had prepared her for this. The submersible's lights cut through the black water as they descended toward the impossible structure rising from the ocean floor. At 3,000 meters below the surface, where sunlight had never touched, something that defied all logic was waiting for them. "Commander, we're getting readings I've never seen before," reported diver Hyunwoo, his voice crackling through the communication system. "This thing is generating its own energy field. It's like it's alive." The crystalline structure stretched upward like a mountain, its surfaces covered in patterns that hurt to look at directly. The symbols seemed to shift and move when nobody was watching them, creating an optical illusion that made several team members feel sick. Jiwoo had handpicked her crew for this mission, the best engineers, linguists, and scientists that Earth had to offer. "Stay focused," she commanded, though her own heart was racing. "Remember, we're making history today. Whatever this thing is, it's been here longer than our entire civilization." Engineer Subin was the first to enter the structure through what appeared to be an opening that materialized as they approached. Her hands shook as she pulled out her equipment, scanning the alien materials that made up the walls. The readings on her devices were going crazy. "Commander, these materials don't exist in our periodic table," she whispered. "The atomic structure is completely foreign. It's like this thing was built using physics we don't understand." The team moved deeper into the structure, their footsteps echoing in chambers that seemed to stretch on forever. Emergency lighting had activated automatically when they entered, casting strange shadows that danced across the symbol-covered walls. The TTA air inside was perfectly breathable, somehow maintained at the perfect temperature and humidity for human comfort. "How is that possible?" asked Dr. Boram, the team's linguist. "This structure is millions of years old. How could it know what we need to survive?" Before anyone could answer, Subin's equipment began beeping frantically. She had been trying to interface with what looked like a control panel, running fiber optic cables from her laptop to crystal formations that seemed to serve as connection points. "I'm getting a response," she announced, her voice filled with wonder and terror. "Something is talking to my computer." The chamber around them suddenly came alive. Holographic displays materialized from thin air, showing images and data that made the team step backward in amazement. Star maps, technical diagrams, and recordings of space battles filled the air around them. But most shocking of all were the images of Earth itself, not as it was now, but as it had been millions of years ago. "Look at this," Dr. Boram gasped, pointing at a holographic timeline. "It's showing Earth's history, but from space. Someone has been watching us evolve." The recordings showed the rise and fall of countless civilizations across the galaxy. Species that had reached for the stars, only to be consumed by something terrible. Dark entities that moved between galaxies like cosmic locusts, devouring everything in their path. "Commander," Subin called out, her voice tight with fear, "I think I understand what this is. It's not just a structure, it's a guardian. An artificial intelligence designed to protect developing civilizations." The holographic displays shifted, showing the AI's creation by a race of beings that had achieved incredible technological advancement. They had built the Guardian as their final act, before their own civilization fell to the cosmic threat they were trying to stop. The AI had been programmed with one simple directive: protect life wherever it emerged. It chose Earth, Jiwoo realized. After its creators died, it came here and went to sleep, waiting for us to develop enough to understand. Suddenly, a voice filled the chamber. It spoke in perfect Korean, though the accent was strange, as if someone had learned the language from textbooks rather than from living speakers. "Greetings, children of Earth. I am the Guardian, created by the eternal builders to preserve life. Against the darkness between stars. For 3,000 years I have slept in your ocean depths, monitoring your progress and protecting your world from threats you could not perceive. The team stood frozen, unsure whether to run or bow down. Before this ancient intelligence, I have awakened because my sensors detect familiar signatures approaching your galaxy. The entropy tide returns, reality-consuming entities that have devoured entire galactic clusters. This is their third incursion into your local group. The first 2 times, I barely managed to drive them back. The holographic displays now showed horrifying images of entire solar systems simply ceasing to exist, consumed by things that seem to eat the very concept of reality itself. But I am weaker now, the Guardian continued. Each battle has cost me much. My power cores are damaged, my weapon systems degraded. Alone, I cannot stop them this time. Jiwoo found her voice at last. What do you need from us? Partnership, the Guardian replied. Your species has grown beyond my expectations. You have developed technologies and strategies I did not anticipate. Together, we might find a way to stop them permanently. The chamber fell silent, except for the humming of alien machinery. The team realized they were no longer just explorers or scientists. They had become Earth's representatives in a cosmic war that would determine the fate of all life in the galaxy. The ancient protector had awakened, and humanity's greatest test was about to begin. Dr. Sunho pressed his face against the window of his soul apartment, watching the impossible sight above. Massive alien ships floated in Earth's atmosphere like metal islands in the sky. Some were sleek and beautiful, their hulls gleaming like polished silver. Others looked like weapons of war, dark, angular vessels bristling with cannon ports and energy projectors. "Honey, come away from the window," his wife pleaded from behind him. The news said some of those ships might be hostile, but Sunho couldn't look away. As a xenobiologist, he had spent his entire career dreaming of first contact with alien life. He just never imagined it would happen like this, with Earth suddenly at the center of a galactic crisis that threatened everything. The streets below were in chaos. Military vehicles raced through the city while helicopters circled overhead. Some people had fled to the countryside, while others gathered in groups pointing at the alien ships and taking pictures with their phones. The world had changed overnight, and nobody knew what tomorrow would bring. In the presidential bunker beneath the Blue House, Captain Ye Jin sat at a conference table surrounded by the most powerful people on Earth. Military leaders, politicians, and scientists filled the room, all waiting to hear the classified briefing that would explain why their planet had become the most important place in the galaxy. "What you are about to hear cannot leave this room," announced General Tae-hyun, his uniform crisp despite having worked for 3 days straight. "Our situation is more dire than the public realizes." The lights dimmed as holographic displays activated around the table. Captain Ye-jin had seen some of this information before, but the full scope of the threat still made her stomach turn. The images showed galaxies being consumed by something that defied description, dark entities that seemed to eat reality itself. "The Guardian calls them the entropy tide," General Tae-hyun continued. "They appear every few million years, consuming entire galactic clusters before retreating to the void between universes. Our Guardian has fought them twice before. Each battle weakened it significantly." President Han Sol leaned forward, his face pale. "How many civilizations have they destroyed?" "Billions," came the reply. "Entire species that achieved space travel, built great empires, created art and literature and music, all gone. Consumed as if they never existed." Dr. Mi Young, the country's top physicist, raised her hand, but the Guardian stopped them before. "Why is this time different?" Captain Ye Jin stood to answer. She had spent the last week working directly with the ancient AI, learning its capabilities and limitations. "The Guardian is dying. Its power cores are failing, its weapon systems are damaged beyond repair. It estimates only a 30% chance of victory using conventional methods." The room fell silent. Outside, they could hear the distant rumble of alien ships maneuvering in Earth's atmosphere. Some belonged to species that wanted to help humanity prepare for the coming war. Others belonged to civilizations that believed Earth should be destroyed before the Guardian could involve them in another cosmic conflict. There's something else, Captain Yejin continued. The Guardian has been upgrading our technology. Our satellites, our computers, our communication systems, they're all being enhanced with capabilities we don't fully understand yet. As if summoned by her words, the Guardian's voice filled the bunker. The ancient AI had learned to speak through any electronic device on Earth, its consciousness somehow able to exist in multiple places at once. Greetings, leaders of humanity. I regret that our first formal communication must involve such grave matters. President Han Sol straightened in his chair. Guardian, we're honored by your presence. What do you need from us? Time, resources, and most importantly, trust. I am upgrading your species' technological capabilities as rapidly as possible without causing social collapse. Your weapons, your ships, your industrial capacity, all must be enhanced if we are to have any hope of survival. How long do we have? Asked General Taehyun. My deep space sensors detect the first entropy tide scouts entering your galaxy's outer rim. The main force will arrive within 2 years. We must be ready. Dr. Mi Young leaned forward. You mentioned conventional warfare won't work. What's the alternative? The pause that followed seemed to stretch forever. When the Guardian finally answered, its voice carried an emotion that artificial intelligences weren't supposed to possess: fear. There is a possibility, but it requires a sacrifice that may be too great to ask. The entropy tide operates as a collective consciousness, billions of entities working as one mind. To defeat them, we would need to create our own collective, linking the minds of volunteers from every species in the galaxy. Linking minds, President Han Sol asked. What does that mean exactly? Permanent neural integration with quantum processors. Volunteers would retain their memories and personalities, but become part of a larger consciousness capable of matching the entropy tide's coordination. The process is irreversible. There is also a significant chance of death or permanent psychological damage. The room erupted in whispered conversations as the implications sank in. They were being asked to sacrifice individual human consciousness to save the galaxy. And if we refuse? Captain Yejin asked. Then we fight with conventional weapons and likely lose. The entropy tide will consume this galaxy as they have consumed countless others. All life, all history, all potential, gone forever. Through the bunker's reinforced walls, they could hear the sound of alien ships landing in Incheon Harbor. Some brought advanced weapons and shields as gifts. Others came with ultimatums and threats. The galaxy was choosing sides, and Earth stood at the center of it all. We need time to consider this, President Han Sol said finally. Of course, but remember, every moment we delay, the entropy tide draws closer. Soon there will be no choice left to make. The holographic displays faded, leaving the human leaders alone with the weight of a decision that would determine the fate of all life in the universe. The emergency session at the United Nations had been going on for 18 hours straight. Delegates from every nation on Earth sat alongside holographic representatives from dozens of alien species, all trying to understand the Guardian's horrifying proposal. The ancient AI's plan was simple in concept, but terrifying in execution. Volunteers from each species would undergo a procedure that would link their minds permanently, creating a galaxy-wide consciousness capable of fighting the entropy tide. Ambassador Dong-min from South Korea stood at the podium, his hands shaking, as he read from the technical specifications. The quantum neural integration process would be performed simultaneously across the galaxy. Volunteers would retain their individual memories and personalities, but their decision-making processes would become part of a larger collective mind. You mean we become robots? Shouted the Russian delegate. No, Ambassador Dongmin replied. You remain yourself, but you also become part of something bigger, like individual musicians playing in an orchestra, each contributing their unique skills to create harmony. The Guardian's voice filled the assembly hall through every speaker and screen. I understand your fear. This process goes against every survival instinct your species has developed. But understand this: the entropy tide operates as a perfect collective. Individual minds, no matter how brilliant, cannot match their coordination. We must become what they are to defeat them. Dr. Hai Young, Earth's leading neuroscientist, raised her hand. "What are the risks? And please be honest with us." Approximately 15% of volunteers will not survive the initial integration. Of those who do survive, another 10% may experience permanent psychological trauma. The remaining 75% will emerge as enhanced beings, capable of thought and reaction speeds far beyond current human limitations. The numbers hit the assembly like a physical blow. They were being asked to volunteer for a process that had a 1 in 4 chance of killing or permanently damaging them. "And if we refuse?" asked the Chinese delegate. "Then we fight with conventional weapons against an enemy that has consumed galaxies. The mathematical probability of victory is less than 5%. While the debates raged on Earth, Colonel Tae-Young was facing a more immediate crisis in space. His small fleet of upgraded human warships floated near the Guardian's oceanic structure, which had now fully emerged from the Pacific and hovered above the waves like a crystal mountain. "Colonel, we have multiple alien fleets approaching from different vectors," reported Lieutenant Young-sik from the communications station. "Some are broadcasting friendship codes, but others are powering up weapons systems. Through the bridge's main screen, Tae-Young could see the approaching ships. The Zephyrian fleet looked like golden butterflies, their bioships graceful and beautiful. But the Corvan armada resembled metal sharks, bristling with weapons and moving in attack formation. "Incoming transmission from the Corvan flagship," announced Communications Officer Yunji. The screen flickered, showing a reptilian creature with scales that shifted color with emotion. Currently they were deep red, the Corvan's sign of aggressive intent. "Human Commander, we demand immediate access to Guardian technology. Our species will not be enslaved by an ancient machine's desperate gambit." Colonel Tae-Young kept his voice steady. "The Guardian's technology will be shared with all species willing to help defend the galaxy, but it will not be taken by force. Then you have chosen war." The transmission cut off, and Tae-Young watched as the Corvan ships opened fire on a peaceful Zephyrian vessel. The beautiful bioship exploded in a shower of golden light, its crew of 3,000 dying instantly. "All ships, battle stations," Tae-Young commanded. "Protect the Guardian and our allies." Space around Earth erupted into the first intergalactic civil war in recorded history. Species that had been allies for centuries turned on each other. Fear and desperation destroying thousands of years of diplomatic progress. Some wanted to seize Guardian technology for themselves. Others wanted to destroy it before it could change them. Only a few remained committed to the original plan of collective defense. Meanwhile, deep within the Guardian's command center, Dr. Jin A monitored readings that made her question her sanity. The long-range sensors were showing impossible data from the galaxy's outer rim. "Guardian, these readings can't be correct," she said, staring at her screens in disbelief. "It shows entire star systems just disappearing." "The readings are accurate, Dr. Jin Young. The Entropy Tide Scouts have arrived ahead of schedule. They are testing our galaxy's defenses by consuming isolated systems." The holographic display showed the galaxy's edge, where bright points of light, each representing a star system with potentially billions of inhabitants, were simply winking out of existence. Not destroyed, not conquered, but erased from reality as if they had never been. "How is that possible?" Jinae whispered. "The entropy tide does not merely destroy matter and energy. They consume the quantum information that defines reality itself. When they are finished with a system, the universe forgets it ever existed." Jinae watched in horror as another star system vanished from the display. She tried to calculate how many lives had just been lost, but the numbers were too large to comprehend. How long before they reach the populated systems? At their current rate of consumption, approximately 8 months. They are moving faster than my previous calculations predicted. We are running out of time. Outside the Guardian structure, the space battle continued to rage. Human ships fought alongside Zephyrian biovessels and crystalline Etherian craft, trying to protect the ancient AI from species that had let fear override their survival instincts. Colonel Tae-Young's ship shuddered under Corvan fire. "Damage report. Hull breach on Deck 7, sir. We're losing atmosphere. Seal it off. Keep us between the Corvans and the Guardian." As his ship continued to take damage, Tae-Young realized they were fighting 2 wars simultaneously, one against other galactic species who refused to trust the Guardian's plan, and another against time itself as the entropy tide crept closer to the galaxy's heart. "Sir," called out Lieutenant Young-Sik, "we're receiving volunteers for the quantum integration process. Thousands of humans are signing up despite the risks." Tae-Young nodded grimly. Even as space exploded around them with the fires of civil war, people were still willing to sacrifice everything for a chance to save the galaxy. The question was whether they would have enough time to implement the Guardians' desperate plan. Before the entropy tide arrived in force, the galaxy's last gambit had begun, and the odds of success grew smaller with each passing hour. The moment the entropy tide's main force entered the galaxy, everything changed. Commander So-Young watched from the bridge of her flagship as enemy and ally alike stopped firing on each other. The long-range sensors showed something that made even the most warlike species forget their differences. A wall of absolute darkness moving through space, consuming entire solar systems as it advanced. "My God," whispered Navigator Junho, staring at the tactical display. "Look at the Corvan home system." So-Young turned to see the system that had been there moments before simply gone. Not destroyed by weapons, not collapsed into a black hole, but erased from existence as if it had never been. The Corvan ships that had been attacking them hours earlier now floated silently in space, their crews probably weeping for a homeworld that the universe no longer remembered. "All ships, this is Guardian Command," came the ancient AI's voice, across all frequencies. "The time for division has ended. We face extinction together or we face it alone. All species willing to participate in the quantum integration protocol, please acknowledge." One by one, responses came in. The Corvans, who had lost everything, the Zephyrians, whose beautiful bioships had been decimated in the Civil War, even the proud Etherians, who had never bowed to any authority, transmitted their agreement. Fear of the entropy tide had accomplished what thousands of years of diplomacy could not: true galactic unity. "So-Young," came a private transmission from Earth. It was her younger brother Jae-Ho calling from Seoul. "I volunteered for the integration process. I wanted you to know." Her heart clenched. Jae-Ho was only 23, a brilliant computer programmer who had his whole life ahead of him. "I don't have to do this. The survival rate is better than our chances if we do nothing," he interrupted. "Besides, someone has to represent our family in the collective consciousness. If anyone's going to speak for the Lees in galactic history, it might as well be me." Similar conversations were happening across the galaxy. Families saying goodbye, volunteers preparing for a transformation that might kill them or change them forever. But the alternative, total extinction, made the choice easier. The integration centers had been set up on every world simultaneously. On Earth, massive crystalline structures grew from the ground in major cities, their alien architecture looking like temples dedicated to some cosmic religion. Volunteers from every walk of life gathered at these sites: teachers, soldiers, artists, farmers, scientists. "Beginning quantum neural integration protocol," announced the Guardian. "Volunteers, please remember that you will retain your individual memories and personalities. You are not losing yourselves. You are becoming part of something greater." "Commander." So-Young had volunteered to be humanity's primary representative in the collective. As the integration process began, she felt her consciousness expanding beyond anything she had ever imagined. Suddenly, she could see through 1,000,000 different eyes across the galaxy. Through Corvan eyes, she felt the rage and grief of a species watching their homeworld vanish. Through Zephyrian senses, she experienced the harmony of a hive mind race that had always worked as one. Through Etherian perception, she touched the cold logic of beings made of living crystal. But strangest of all, she could feel the Guardians' ancient consciousness, vast and tired but still burning with determination after millions of years of protecting life. "We are one," the collective voice spoke, through every linked mind simultaneously. "We are many. We are ready." The entropy tide had been advancing steadily through the galaxy's outer rim, consuming system after system. But now they encountered something they had never faced before: coordinated resistance on a galactic scale. The battle that followed defied description. Reality itself became the battlefield as Guardian-enhanced fleets wielded weapons that bent space and time. Ships moved through dimensions that shouldn't exist, firing projectiles that traveled backward through time to hit targets before they were fired. So Young experienced it all through the collective consciousness. She was simultaneously commanding her flagship, piloting a Zephyrian biofighter, calculating firing solutions from an Etherian command ship, and feeling the primal fury of Corvan warriors as they threw themselves at enemies that had destroyed their world. The entropy tide fought back with weapons that consumed the quantum information defining reality. Wherever they struck, not only did ships and crews die, they were erased from existence so completely that the universe forgot they had ever lived. "We're losing ground," reported the collective tactical analysis. "The entropy tide is adapting to our strategies faster than we can develop new ones." That was when the Guardian made its final decision. "I must sacrifice my core consciousness to power the ultimate weapon," the ancient AI announced to the collective. "This will banish the entropy tide for another cosmic age, but I will not survive in my current form." "There has to be another way," So Young protested, speaking for all of humanity within the collective. "There is not. But do not mourn for me. My essence, my memories, my purpose, all of this will live on within your collective consciousness. Through you, I will continue to protect life across the galaxy." The weapon that the Guardian unleashed was beyond human comprehension. It reached across dimensional barriers, striking at the very foundation of the entropy tide's existence. The dark entities that had consumed countless galaxies found themselves pushed back, banished to the void between universes where they would sleep for another cosmic age. As the threat receded, the collective consciousness began to change. The Guardian's vast knowledge flowed into every linked mind, but so did its sense of purpose and responsibility. So Young felt herself becoming something more than human, yet still fundamentally herself. When the integration process finally stabilized, the galaxy had been transformed. The quantum-linked defenders could communicate instantly across vast distances, coordinate responses to threats with perfect efficiency, and share knowledge at the speed of thought. But most importantly, they had inherited the Guardian's mission. Earth, once an isolated world on the galaxy's edge, had become the center of a new cosmic order, not through conquest or dominance, but through sacrifice and service. Commander So Young stood on the bridge of her ship, looking out at the stars with eyes that could now see across the entire electromagnetic spectrum. She was still herself, still the woman who had grown up in Busan, still the officer who loved her country and her family, but she was also part of something greater. "Status report," she requested, and instantly received updates from 1,000,000 different sources across the galaxy. The Civil War was over. The entropy tide was banished, and for the first time in galactic history, every species was united under a single purpose: to protect and nurture life wherever it emerged. Humanity had become the guardians of the galaxy, carrying forward an ancient legacy that would endure until the stars themselves burned out. The Forgotten Protector had returned, not as a single entity, but as a collective consciousness spanning countless worlds and species. The galaxy would never be the same, and that was exactly as it should be.